Jonathan Schick back with you with another episode of Shtisel Man, and today we are going to focus on something more light. The last number of Shtisel Man episodes I did were a little heavier in tone, more about the psychological intertwining of the episodes, and so I thought I'd do a lighter episode, and I'll use a little bit of humor on some of the inside jokes and get, in my opinion, a little bit gaffes and regarding the various episodes. Specifically, I'm going to talk about Shtisel's episode 3 of season 3. There's gaffes and inside jokes throughout the series, and so, but I'll just focus on this episode with a few good ones, and then we'll get into another thing towards the end. So in this episode, first of all, calling the guy, one of Akiva's friends, Verschlafen. Verschlafen is Yiddish for someone who's basically asleep, or someone who's basically, emotionally asleep, or like not all with it. So that's just a cute little sort of inside joke with calling the guy who ends up forgetting or choosing the wrong baby to bring back to Akiva. That's Verschlafen. Another interesting point is that, or not so much of a point, but in my opinion, a mistake. You have Yasala getting together with the correct Shira this episode, right? The girl that he was supposed to go out with in the first place. And if you'll notice, it's obviously a small thing, but you'll notice that her skirt length is right by the knee. Now, if this was really a straight up Hasidish, type of family or type of, shidduch match or blind date as they have them, a girl in that Hasidic community would not be wearing a skirt to the knee length. Now, her skirt was what we would call tzniut or tznius, which is modest in dress, because the practice would be to wear it to the knee. But in the Hasidic community, the girls coming on a date would not wear a skirt that short. They would wear a skirt mid-length, mid-calf, or something like that. Another small little something, but the creators of the series might argue with me and all that, but there is a distinction, because getting to that point about Hasidim, in my opinion, the Shtisel family is like a conglomeration of various different Hasidic elements. Some you would call them Balabatish or Hamish, and some you would call a term which some people use as a pejorative term, which is Tuna Bagel, or Tuna Bagel, but pronounced in the Hasidic way is Tuna Bagel. What's a Tuna Bagel? So a Tuna Bagel is a Hasidic individual or family that continues wearing the dress of the Hasidic dress. So that would include, the black coat, even perhaps a strimal on Shabbos, the fur hat during the week, black and white. But their actual individual practice varies often drastically from their what they were brought up with. It could vary from just being sort of modern Hasidim, like they are, they'll send their kids often to Hasidic style schools, perhaps, but they'll have a TV, they'll go on vacations, they'll be much more relaxed on vacations, a dip in the pool here, a little bit of, cutting corners here or there. And again, I'm not judging whatsoever, by the way. This is not a judgment. Everyone has their journey, and this is not at all about a judgment, but it's about sort of an interesting subgroup within the Hasidic world that's developed. Some Tuna Bagels would be considered, actually, they no longer are even Orthodox. They wear the dress. They wear what we call the lavush, the dress, but they are not individually. They don't keep Shabbat. They don't keep Shabbos. They don't keep kosher. They don't pray. They don't, et cetera, et cetera. They may keep a few things here and there, but they want to still be associated with the movement because they do appreciate what the familial and the sort of exceptional parts of Hasidic world, which are things like chesed, kindness, and family, and things of that nature, things that come out in the Shtisel series. But the practice of orthodoxy has, for them, have they found wanting, and they are no longer particularly observant. Again, not a judgment, but they are a subgroup. So tuna bagels can be those who are sort of more lighter, more modern, or they can actually be, in certain circumstances, be completely non-observant anymore. Now, that could be quite confusing for kids. Here you're sending me to a Hasidic school, and yet, you're going off to, the Bahamas, and, mom's wearing a swimsuit, and dad's, whatever. Anyway, I don't want to get too belabored into this because it could become quite a controversial topic. And by the way, you have this in all Orthodox movements. You have that in the regular yeshivish element. You have those who are modern yeshivish, who are, wear the black hat, and the woman will wear the sheitel, which is the wig, and, will be officially part of that community. But in practice, their actions are quite modern and quite sort of under the standards that certainly the yeshiva community would normally desire, which again would include TV, internet use, carefree, more, vacations, a certain lifestyle that's a little much more modern in general, etc. Of course, then you have modern Orthodox people in general. But we talked about that in previous episodes. You have, so that's what tuna bagels are. In fact, the term tuna bagel came about because, a Hasidic guy would walk into one of these Borough Park bodegas, kosher bodegas that would be open late at night, and said, "I want a tuna bagel." So they got that thing. In Israel, somebody told me once that in Israel they call this subcategory crispy chickens because the crispy chicken places would be open late at night. And I want a crispy chicken. Okay. So those are the types of things that go on. And one last piece, which I thought was just very cute. You have this actually, and we'll talk about episode 4 next time. This is not a spoiler, but if you haven't watched season 3, episode 4 yet, but I'm sure most of you have, is that when Racheli and Akiva are in an office, and the guy, there seems to be like a very serious conversation about what they're about to do, and he goes off talking about his situation with his father and his father's health, and with all his troubles. That happens in Israel. It does, and it happens it's a very uniquely Jewish thing. Like, here you are sitting in a public office, and you're just sort of, that wouldn't happen in America. Like, you imagine going to the Social Security office or going to, a UPS store or something, and the person starts telling you his troubles. That doesn't happen. So, whereas in Israel, which is like this smallish country, this sort of like everybody knows each other. So that's actually quite common, where people would, just sort of like, schmooze and sort of let their hair down to complete strangers. So it's a very cute Israel thing. One last really cute story about Israel, which I once heard, about how people act in sort of this familial yet, environment. There were 2 people who were driving, and one felt that they were cut off the other one, and they parked their car, and they started this whole big argument, and back and forth and back and forth. And in the middle of all that, a guy comes out on the street and says, "Mincha, mincha. We need a center. We need a 10th. We need a 10th person for the afternoon prayers." By the way, whenever they say we need a 10th, that means they have 6 people or 5 people, and they need 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But to get people to come, they say you're the 10th. Anyway, so, we need a center, which means we need a 10th for the quorum. Okay. So these two people were arguing, they're, arguing back and forth. They go inside and they pray. And after they come out and after they pray, they come back out and then they continue arguing. Classic Israel. Okay, hope you enjoyed this lighter episode, and we'll be back with more Shtisel Man. Don't forget to subscribe.